Alrighty, my friends, how are you all doing? Because, boy, we're having a super fun time here, because I am coming to you from my phone. Because we're having issues with Spectrum, and it's especially delightful because I have a webinar this afternoon in like an hour that I have, I don't know, what do we have, 30 people signed up or something? 20 some odd people signed up for a webinar. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do it. And it's like a big old Zoom webinar and all that good sort of stuff. So we are all doing the best we can, as we are fond of saying around here. So today we are talking about developing the capabilities to feel our feelings at work. Okay, so now I will tell you, feeling your feelings at work, much easier if you have a cat. You'll notice the food safety cat comes in and talks to us fairly frequently, and he does this on my calls. It's super awesome. So here's the deal. You are a human being, okay? And as a human being, you have feelings. Whether you acknowledge your feelings or not, you have them. And the work you do in the world, you bring yourself to. Okay, so last week we talked about telling ourselves the truth of like how we, of our work. You know, what do we do for work? How do we work? With whom do we work? All of that good sort of stuff. Okay, and those are all really good truths to know. And now the question is how do we feel about work? Because here's the deal, my friends, is that your work realities, the hours you work, what you work on, all of that sort of stuff, okay, those truths all create thoughts in your minds. I hate my boss is a thought, not the news, okay? I hate being a stay-at-home dad is a thought, not the news. And I know that it feels like the news. And a lot of what we run into as people who are trying to navigate this is separating out what is a fact, what is a noun around our life, and what is a thought. And this is epically easy to do, to like enmesh those two things around work, because we feel like so many things at work are factual, that we literally are just reporting the news. Like, my boss is a jerk, we feel like is reporting the news. Because what happens is then we go and we build evidence for it. Right? And we talk to all of our friends about the horrible thing our boss did and all of that sort of stuff. And our friends agree with us. And so it feels like what we are saying is really true, because if it wasn't really true, why would everybody agree with us? Because, boy, there are some people who we can agree with are really, truly jerks. Right? But where does that get you? That's the question. And so when I talk about feeling your feelings at work, I want to talk about not only feeling the negative feelings at work, but also feeling the positive feelings at work, because that's important too. And when you're willing to feel all of those feelings, what does that look like for your work situation? Okay, I have a ton of people who come and talk to me, all right, about how much they hate work. All right, I have a lot of clients who come and talk to me about how much they hate their employees. So I have news for y'all. Hate, and I'm not the first person that said this, hate is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die, right? And you know that. When we hate the people that we work with, it leaks out into everything in all of our lives, because we spend 80% of our waking lives with the people that we work with. And if you're convinced you need to change your job because you hate the people that you work with, because you hate your boss, I'm never going to tell you now's a great time to change your job. I'm never going to tell you the time to divorce your spouse is in a space of hating that spouse. All right? Because all you're doing when you make those changes is you're changing the circumstance. And you are the person creating the thoughts that are creating the hate. All right? I was talking about this in a coaching group that I was in December, and one of the coaches there was somebody who he coached people who chucked it all and moved into an RV. Okay, so either quit their job or retired, mostly retired, sold the family home, and went in to go RVing. And it turns out that when you chuck it all and move into an RV with your spouse, you still bring yourself and your brain with you, right? Hence the need for coaching. And it's the same thing if you decide to change a job or change a spouse or whatever, because you still bring your brain with you. And so my recommendation is, if you are in a place where you totally hate your job, you've written out all the truths around your job, when you show up, how much you get paid, all your tasks, all of those sorts of things, and you've written out all of those truths, and then you've written out all of your thoughts about all of those truths, you can try on the idea that your thoughts may or may not be true. And then you can figure out how you want to feel, all right? And when I talk about how you want to feel, I'm not talking about, please, for the love of God, do not go and become handsy Uncle Joe at work and start sexually assaulting people. That's not what I'm talking about. Feeling feelings does not mean getting all huggy and kissy at work, and if that's how you're interpreting it, we have other things to talk about. No. Feeling your feelings at work is recognizing when you are frustrated with a coworker or you are frustrated with your boss, and you recognize that your frustration is caused by your thoughts and not caused by your boss. It's not caused by your coworkers. It's not caused by your clients. It is caused by the thoughts that you are creating in your own head. And I know that that can be rough to hear, and I promise you, if I could wave a magic wand and change everybody around you so that you felt better, I would totally do it, and I would already have a multi-million-dollar business, right? But that's not how that works. You have all of the power here. Once you decide you have all of the power here, okay? You have the job that you have. And I want you to ask yourself, like, what the heck does it look like to have the job that I have and have all of the feelings that are associated with that job? Because it is only once you dive down those questions that you can think about changing to something else. Okay, and so I'm going to take an example from my kids, because I was working on this morning. So I was working with Zach, and Zach needs some help with his handwriting. He's 12 years old, and he needs some help writing, okay? And he was... Before we ever do any work, what we do is we get our brains together. And I say, okay, so what thought are you going into work with, like to work on this with? And he's like, I can do it. And I was like, okay, I can do it, by the way, is what I call like a cheerleading thought. And usually I can do it can take a whole lot of emotional energy. And so I kind of dived down into that with him. And I was like, okay, so what are the positive and the negative feelings? So if you're trying to figure out what you feel at work, I want you to take the thought download that you did last week, all right, around your work hours. For heaven's sakes, let's just start there, because you have work hours. You get to work at 8:30 in the morning, right? Write down 10 thoughts that you have about 8:30 in the morning, getting to work at 8:30 in the morning. It's too early. I feel like the day is half over. I never have any time. I don't have time to eat breakfast. What are some other thoughts people have about getting to work at 8:30 in the morning? Traffic at 8:30 is to get to work at 8:30 is really, really bad. As if we were in a normal situation. I love getting to work at 8:30 because I miss all the morning drama with the kids. I love getting to work at 8:30 because it gives me time to drop the kids off at school, right? So whatever that circumstance may be, you can write down what you are thinking about that circumstance, okay? When you have all of those thoughts written down, right, I want you to ask yourself the question, what are the positive emotions that this brings up, and what are the negative emotions that this brings up, okay? So if you have a client call at 9 o'clock in the morning, all right? Client call, 9 o'clock in the morning. That's too early for a client call. That's too late for a client call. I'm never ready for a 9 o'clock call. Whatever it is that you feel, that you think. And then ask how those thoughts make you feel, okay? There are going to be positive emotions and there are going to be negative emotions associated with all of those thoughts, okay? Because you are a complex human being and you have positive emotions and you have negative emotions and you have them in 50-50 most of the time. It's just that when we're in negative emotion, a lot of the time, we feel like something is going wrong, okay? And then we compound how badly we feel because we feel like something is going wrong. And at work, when we're not getting along with the people that we work with, when we're not getting along with our boss, or we have issues with our work hours or any of the other things that we have to do, the projects we have to do or whatever, and we feel negatively about it, we compound that negativity by saying something is going wrong here. If I feel like this, something is going wrong here. And that's when you call up your friends and you're like, oh my God, let me tell you about all the things that happened. And I totally get it because that's incredibly human. We want to go and we want to find community and we want to find victims and we want to find villains. Okay? And if you are feeling like a victim around getting to work at 8:30, for example, or having a 9 o'clock client call, or in my case right now, I'm feeling like a victim of Spectrum Communications, then you're going to go search for a villain. Okay, but here's what happens, is that we are irrational creatures. And if I could tell you, all right, that going off in search of a villain always landed you on the villain worth blaming, knock yourself out. Go in search of a victim or of a villain for your victimhood. But it doesn't actually work because the way your brain works is when you're in victim, like, we call it victim mentality. And I'm not, like, don't take this to some, like, radical extreme about domestic violence and that sort of thing. Just, that's your brain wanting to argue with me. And I totally get it, but stop it. But when you're like, I am the victim of circumstance, okay? So I think I sent this out in one of the emails this week talking about being a victim of circumstance, talking about being subjected to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. When we're in that mentality, any villain will do, okay? And that's when we end up triangulating, okay? So for those of you who are not familiar with triangulating, this is a concept I learned from a book called The Dance of Anger, okay? Or the Anger Book, as I called it throughout my 20s. And I don't even remember who wrote it, but it's a super interesting book. And basically the idea is a lot of times what we end up doing is we end up triangulating, okay? So I am feeling like I am mad at Zachary for one reason and I take it out on Ben. That's a classic triangulation. A parent is mad at one kid but can't cope with that being mad or can't figure out the problem or whatever, and then they take it out on somebody else. Okay, in boss and subordinate relationships, this happens all the time. Boss 1 is mad at boss 2, and bosses 1 and 2 take it all out on the employees. Okay, I've definitely seen that happen at work. But what that really is the people being unable to manage their own negative emotions. Because when you're out looking for a villain, any villain will do. And so you go out and you pick another, like another villain, whether or not they had anything to do with the situation at hand that you are thinking about. Okay? And that's a really tough way to be in the world. Okay? Because when we're feeling like if that person would change, then I will feel better, it never works. And I wish that it did, guys. I really, really wish that it did, because then I would go out and I would change everybody. But I can't. The only people we can change are the people who we are. Okay? And we change that by recognizing our negative emotions and deciding to feel our negative emotions and knowing that our negative emotions won't actually kill us. All right. And knowing that we can feel our positive emotions, and that even in the worst job situations, there are positive things that come out of it in whatever work situation that you are in. Okay. And there is so much that you can do and so much that you can find out about yourself by looking at your emotions around work. Because my question for you, and the question that we're going to be diving into as this, as we develop this concept around developing capabilities, is what are the results that you are looking for? Because when you can identify the results that you're looking for, then we can figure out what capabilities we want to develop. But right now, what we got to develop is the capability to feel our own feelings around work. Okay? And when we're feeling our own feelings around work, we can develop the capacity to have the job that we have without going out and trying to change it. Okay, and so what does that actually look like? It looks like, again, telling ourselves the truth and writing down what our negative emotions are, okay? And telling ourselves the whole entire story of whatever those negative emotions may actually be. All right? And when you have those negative emotions, okay, and you think of a project that you have to do, okay, because most of us have figured out one way or another how to exchange time for money, and you have a negative emotion about a project at work. I don't want to do this, okay? So this happened to me yesterday. I had somebody who I had to talk to, and they are roasting nuts, okay, and salmonella control and roasting nuts is really quite challenging. It is very, very, very difficult to control for salmonella in nut roasting processes, and it's even more difficult in already established nut roasting processes. And I am not gonna lie, I avoided writing them in this email for like 3 days because I didn't want to disappoint them. They paid me, like I'm paid to find solutions. Sometimes I can and sometimes I can't, right? Like everybody else. But I was avoiding the negative emotion, okay, of fear, because my thought was, I'm going to disappoint my client. Now here's the thing, I can't disappoint my client. Disappointment is a feeling that my clients manufacture in their own heads from sentences of their own making, based on stuff that I may or may not tell them, okay? There are a ton of clients that I have disappointed, quote unquote, based on things that, like, I never even said. Like, I don't even have to do anything and I disappoint people, right? Because all of that is them. It's all them, okay? And all of these negative emotions that we have in our heads, based on our work lives, all of those negative emotions are about the sentences we have in our own heads. And when we are at work and we are interacting with other people, the negative emotions we attribute to them are sentences in their own heads, okay? And if you want to figure out, there's a great exercise to do, okay, based upon trying to figure out what everybody else is thinking and feeling, okay? And this is an excellent exercise to develop empathy and compassion, okay? So somebody's having a super bad day at work, okay? Somebody's really having a tough time with isolation and coronavirus and all of those sorts of things, all right? And you're all in a meeting and they're like droning on and they won't stop talking or whatever, and you're noticing negative emotion in your own self, but you're getting anxiety about your own negative emotion, okay? What if you started paying attention to the person who was talking and tried to figure out what they are thinking, how that might be making them feel, and then how they are acting, okay? And this isn't so that you can reveal this to them, not at all. This is so you can start seeing those very same patterns in your own self, because sometimes it does take looking at other people, you know, before we see stuff in our own self. And the difference is whether or not we comment on them. I mean, you know, like take the beam out of your own eye before you look at the splinter in somebody else's. But it's always easier to see somebody else's splinter than the beam in our own eye. And so we're not going to talk to them about this unless you are in a coaching relationship. Then ask permission and talk to them about it, right? Or what you can do is figure out how they're thinking, how they might be feeling, and how they are acting. You can reverse that, all right? And this is something that we can do at work all the time, and you can do it with yourself, okay? How did I act? And I did this. This is how I really learned to control my access to my email inbox. I looked at how I was acting and how often I was hitting refresh on my email inbox, looking for emails and things like that to distract myself. So the action was checking email kind of repetitively or hitting refresh. That was the action that I was doing. And then I was able to look at that action kind of from an observer point of view. And I was like, I'm feeling really anxious. And I sat with just those two things in my head for like 3 straight days. And I noticed every time I checked my email, I took my own temperature, I guess, of what I was feeling, and I wrote down what I was feeling, okay? So if you are having trouble feeling your feelings at work, you could look at what action you are doing and what feeling you have, because feelings drive actions every single time. And that's a really easy way for you to take your own temperature at work. And when I do this with people and they're telling me that they have to go in and they have to, you know, like talk to their employees or whatever. And I was like, okay, did you talk to your employees? If your employees were going to tell me what you did, would the verb yell come into it? I mean, we try not yell at people at work, but people being people, yelling at work is one of the things people do. And so if it's not that, is it sending snarky emails? You know, is it firing back emails? So this is one of the things that I've stopped. I was thinking about this broadcast today, and I was thinking about how I have stopped firing back emails because I don't do email in urgency anymore. Because that was the feeling that I had every time I was like refreshing and I would get an email and I would fire back an email. I was doing it all in urgency. And I was like, well, shit, I don't want to grow my business in urgency. I want to grow my business in joy and community and connection and love. And urgency isn't really a big part of that. And even though I work with people on urgent matters, I don't have to do things in urgency because I'm not serving them at my highest capacity if things are in urgency, right? And so that's a way, whatever it is, whatever action you're taking, just think back, what feeling do I have? And if you can't do it in the immediate moment, because we can't always, but that's not true most of the time. You know, I mean, most of the time we're like sitting in meetings or we're checking our email or we're doing other stuff, and just take your own temperature about what feeling am I feeling. Go back to, you know, Google feelings wheel and go back to your feelings wheel and see what you might be coming up with on your feelings wheel so that you can take your own temperature. And if you can't even do that, just ask yourself, am I feeling positively or am I feeling negatively? Okay, and most of us are self-aware enough to just start there. And that is enough, I promise. Putting a little like positive or negative sign next to how you're feeling and like maybe do a time audit. So it's, what time is it right now? It's almost 12:30 here. We have a time audit. Okay, so I write down 12:25 and I am feeling, I would say, anxious because I've got a webinar coming up at the top of the hour and my internet isn't working all of that well. And I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do my webinar, but I will tell you I am not canceling my webinar. And so I'm feeling anxious about that. And then the question becomes, once I've identified that anxiety, what am I going to do to figure it out? What am I going to do to figure out how to have this webinar happen? Okay. But if I let myself stay in anxiety, whatever solution I come up with will feel in urgency, it'll feel terrible. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to get up on a webinar, okay, and I'm going to teach really, really badly, which is not what I want to do. Like, I am all in on teaching supplier approval programs to my people because they're so important, or else I wouldn't be teaching them as a webinar, right? But I want to be in possibility and love when I teach my webinar in a half an hour. And in order to do that, I've got to deal with the anxiety I have right now as I am talking to you and listening to Andrew as he's on the phone with Spectrum and figuring out what the hell Spectrum's doing with our wireless and our cable and all of that jazz. All right? And that's really how it works. It is, I mean, I suppose sometimes our emotions are subtle, but most of the time they're not. You can, the big emotions, anger, anxiety, fear, sadness, hurt, all of that sort of stuff, you can identify all of that. You can identify the positive emotions. Go get yourself a feelings wheel, okay? And understand the feeling that you have right now and figure out if it's one that you want to have. And develop the capacity to have the feelings that you have, because that's how you're going to create the capacity to have the job that you have. All right? And that's what we're trying to get to, because I don't want you guys to say, oh, well, Dr. P said I should quit my job because I feel negatively here. No, that's not what Dr. P is saying. Dr. P is saying, develop the capacity to have the job that you have, to understand the positives and the negative emotions associated with your job, and then make a choice, knowing that whatever job you move to will also have positive and negative emotions associated with them. All right? I have seen this work in action. I have coached people through how to do this, and they never end up changing jobs because all of a sudden they find out they can manage all of their emotions at work and they don't have to go look for another job. It's pretty amazing. All right, so that's what I have for you today. Tomorrow we're going to talk about our feelings about incoming money. So get all your truth written down about your incoming money, my friends, and we're going to have an amazing, amazing conversation tomorrow. You are all incredible, beautiful people. I love you very, very much, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, guys.